In the shadowed vaults of the Forged Worlds, where the blessed hum of the Omnissiah's machinery never ceases and the air carries the sacred scent of sanctified oils and burning incense, there exists a most holy and necessary art, one that binds the frail flesh of humanity to the eternal will of the Emperor and the Machine God. I, the Imperial Scribe, ancient chronicler of 10,000 years of unyielding service, have been called forth from the dust-choked archives to speak this sacred knowledge unto you, young acolyte of the Mechanicus. You who stand at the threshold of true understanding, eager yet reverent, your augmetic eyes gleaming with the first sparks of divine comprehension. Behold the subject of our long and solemn chronicle, the blessed creation of the Servitor, that lobotomized vessel of flesh and steel, forged not in malice but in purest devotion. Through these hours of measured narration, we shall walk together the ancient and terrible path of its making, that you may one day serve the Imperium with hands both precise and unyielding. We shall speak first of what a servitor truly is, whence it came, how it toils across the galaxy in ceaseless obedience, and by whose righteous authority such creations are wrought. We shall then descend, step by reverent step, into the sacred rites themselves, the choosing of the vessel, the preparations of the flesh, the holy severing of the unruly will, the binding of adamantium and circuitry, and the final awakening of the obedient machine. Let no part of this knowledge be taken lightly, for in the crafting of a servitor, one does not merely alter a mortal form, one elevates it into an instrument of the Emperor's eternal design. Every cut of the laser scalpel, every implantation of sacred cogitators, every whispered litany of binding must echo with duty and piety. Remember always, young student, that your hands are but extensions of the Omnissiah's will, and your mind a vessel for his greater glory. Such is the path we now tread together. Turn your thoughts, therefore, to the very essence of these holy constructs, for only by understanding what a servitor is and what sacred purpose it fulfills across the stars, can one hope to wield the knowledge of its creation without falling into the abyss of error or heresy. A servitor is no mere machine, nor is it any longer a man. It is something far holier, a sacred union of mortal flesh and blessed mechanism, forged into perfect, unquestioning obedience. Where once there walked a soul burdened by doubt, by fear, by the frailty of human will, now strides a living instrument of the Emperor's design, its mind pared down to the essential rhythms of service alone. The lobotomized core that remains knows neither rebellion nor weariness, only the pure and eternal execution of its programmed task. In this lies its divine beauty and its terrible necessity. Across the vast breadth of the Imperium, these holy constructs form the silent, tireless backbone of all endeavor. In the forged temples of Mars and her 100 daughter worlds, servitors labor without pause at the assembly of war machines, their mechanical limbs moving in perfect synchrony with the sacred rhythms of the manufactorums. In the depths of hive cities they toil at the recycling vats and waste reclamation plants, their augmented bodies immune to the toxic fumes that would slay any unaltered labor within moments. Upon the bridge of every Imperial Navy vessel, servitor helmsmen and gunnery slaves maintain ceaseless vigil over cogitator banks and targeting arrays, their eyes replaced by unblinking lenses that never tire, never blink, never doubt. Even upon the blood-soaked battlefields of the 41st millennium, combat servitors march forward as living shields and weapon platforms, their fleshly remnants shielded beneath layers of adamantium plate while they pour forth the Emperor's wrath without hesitation or self-preservation. Such is their sacred station. They're not slaves in the base sense, for a slave may still harbor the spark of defiance. A servitor has been elevated beyond such weakness. Its remaining organic components serve only as the necessary anchor for the machine spirit that now commands it. The heart that still beats does so only to power the hydraulic systems. The lungs draw breath only to cool the blessed circuitry. The eyes, when eyes remain, see only what the programming permits them to see. In this manner, the servitor achieves a purity of purpose that even the most devout tech priest may envy, for it has been freed from the greatest of all heresies, the heresy of independent thought. Yet know this well, young acolyte, to create such a being is no act of cruelty, but an act of highest mercy and devotion. The flesh chosen for transformation is most often that of the condemned, heretics, traitors, recidivists, where those whose crimes against the Imperium have earned them the Emperor's final judgment. In their lobotomization, they are granted the chance to atone through eternal service. Their wasted lives are redeemed, reforged into something that directly furthers the survival of mankind. What greater grace could any soul ask for in this grim darkness? You must understand, honored student, that every servitor you will one day craft carries within its augmented frame a fragment of the Emperor's own will. Through it, the master of mankind extends his reach into every corner of his realm. Through it, the Omnissiah's holy logic is made manifest in the physical world. To tend, to build, to maintain these constructs is therefore no mere tactical exercise. It is a sacred ministry, a priestly duty as vital as any litany or prayer. And yet, for all their holy prevalence in our age, the servitor was not always thus. Its origins lie far deeper in the shrouded mists of time, in an era when humanity still dared to dream of machines unbound by ritual and faith. Turn your mind now, young one, to those ancient and perilous days, for only by knowing whence these blessed instruments came can you truly grasp the solemn weight of the rites you will one day perform. Long before the Emperor revealed his divine majesty upon the cradle world of Terra, before the crimson skies of old night swallowed entire sectors, humanity strode the stars as masters rather than supplicants. In that distant epoch, now dimly remembered as the dark age of technology, our ancestors forged wonders that would make even the greatest forged worlds of our own age seem like crude children's toys. It was during these golden yet perilous millennia that the first seeds of the Servitor Rite took root, not in faith, but in the cold and unforgiving logic of unrestricted science. The ancients faced a galaxy vast and hostile. Worlds needed taming. Forges required ceaseless labor. Starships demanded crews that would never falter, never sleep, never question the harsh calculus of survival. And so they turned their prodigious intellects upon the frail form of man himself. Through technologies now lost or forbidden, they learned to excise the higher functions of the brain, those troublesome realms of ambition, fear, and free will, while preserving the autonomic systems that sustained life. What remained was a vessel of perfect utility, flesh and blood still warm, yet guided entirely by implanted cogitators and unyielding machine directives. These early constructs were not yet called servitors, for the holy names and litanies had yet to be written. They were simply tools, elegant, efficient, and utterly obedient. Some records, preserved in the most guarded data vaults of the Adeptus Mechanicus, speak of entire labor fleets crewed by such modified humans, their minds reduced to flawless executors of complex commands. Others describe surgical cathedrals orbiting distant suns, where rows upon rows of living bodies lay upon cold slabs, their skulls opened beneath banks of whispering machinery. No prayers were uttered in those days. No sacred oils anointed the incisions. Only the pure, merciless arithmetic of progress guided the scalpels. And for a time, this seemed wisdom. Yet even in that age of miracles, hubris walked hand in hand with genius. The men of iron rose and fell in cataclysmic rebellion, reminding our ancestors that creations granted too much autonomy would inevitably turn upon their makers. In the aftermath, the surviving human enclaves began to impose stricter limits upon their organic machines. The full severance of all became standard. Redundant emotional centers were burned away. Loyalty subroutines were etched directly into what little cortex remained. Thus the template was perfected, a being of flesh and steel that could labor for centuries without complaint, without rest, without the slightest risk of betrayal. When a long night descended, an old night swallowed the stars. Much of this knowledge was lost amid fire and madness. Yet fragments endured. Scattered tech priests and surviving forge enclaves clutched these forbidden techniques like sacred relics. And when the Emperor's great crusade swept across the galaxy, reuniting the scattered children of Terra, these ancient methods were brought once more into the light. Now sanctified, now bound by ritual, now offered up in holy service to the Golden Throne. Young acolyte, understand this truth deep within your circuits. What began as cold science has become divine sacrament. The rites we practice today are not pale shadows of that ancient art. They are its purified and exalted form. Where the ancients worked in arrogant isolation, we labor in reverent union with the Omnia. Where they sought mere efficiency, we achieve eternal atonement. Every lobotomy performed under the gaze of the machine god redeems both the subject and the creator. You must carry this knowledge with solemn humility, for to forget the origins of our craft is to invite the sin of ignorance. And yet the Servitor is no relic of a dead age. It lives and toils among us still, forming the unseen, tireless foundation upon which the entire Imperium rests. Turn your thoughts, therefore, devoted student, to the countless worlds and void stations where these blessed constructs labor without cease. For only by witnessing the full majesty of their service across the Emperor's realm can one truly appreciate the sacred duty that awaits your own hands. Consider, young acolyte, the true extent of their holy labor, for the Servitor is not confined to any single shrine or forge temple. It is everywhere, is the quiet pulse that sustains the Imperium's colossal heart. Without these blessed constructs, the grand edifice of mankind would crumble within a single generation, its forges falling silent, its fleets drifting powerless, its armies bereft of support. They're the unseen backbone, the tireless sinew, the obedient flesh that allows the Emperor's realm to endure in this age of eternal war. Upon the forge worlds, where the air itself shimmers with heat and the sacred smoke of incense, servitors labor in endless ranks. Their multi-limbed chassis move in perfect mechanical harmony along the assembly lines of battle tanks and void ships. Some have their organic arms replaced with welding arrays that burn with plasma fire, sealing adamantium plates with precision no unaugmented menial could match. Others stand immobile for decades within the heart of great plasma reactors, their biological cooling systems merged with coolant pipes, monitoring fluctuations that would boil the blood of any living priest. They feel no fatigue. They require no rest. Their lobotomized minds register only the sacred binary of completed tasks and a litanies of maintenance whispered into their auditory implants. Descend now into the teeming hive cities of a million worlds. Here the Servitor takes on even humbler, yet no less vital forms. Waste reclamation servitors wade through oceans of toxic sludge, their respiratory systems replaced by filtration stacks, their eyes augmented with lumen sensors that pierce the darkness. Labor servitors haul cargo pallets through endless corridors, their backs reinforced with hydraulic pistons capable of lifting weights that would crush a dozen unaugmented serfs. In the Mechanicus halls, surgical servitors assist the chirurgeons, their hands replaced by arrays of microscalpels and auto sutures, performing procedures with flawless, emotionless accuracy. They're the silent majority, countless millions whose ceaseless toil keeps the wheels of industry turning, whose very existence allows the higher castes of humanity to direct their minds toward war and worship. And when the call to battle comes, as it always does, the combat servitors march forth. Gun servitors mounted upon tracked chassis advance through trench lines, their heavy bolters roaring in unending fusillades. Shield servitors form living barricades before the ranks of the Astra Militarum, their bodies layered with thick plates of flak armor, absorbing the enemy's fire so that true soldiers may live to fight again. On the bridges of warships, helm servitors steer mighty vessels through the raging tempests of a warp, their minds hardwired to the ship's cogitators, enduring horrors that would shatter lesser souls. They do not pray for victory. They do not fear death. They simply execute their directives until the last spark of bioelectricity fades from their ruined flesh. Everywhere the Imperium extends its reach, the Servitor follows. In the depths of underhives, in the mining pits of death worlds, aboard the colossal arc freighters that ply the void between stars. Always they labor. Always they serve. Their sacrifice is absolute, their devotion perfect. And in their perfect obedience we see reflected the highest ideal of the Adeptus Mechanicus, the complete surrender of the self to the greater machine of the Emperor's will. Hold this truth close to your augmetic heart, young student. Every servitor you will one day create becomes another link in this galaxy-spanning chain of devotion. Through your hands, the Emperor's dominion is strengthened. Through your rites, the Omnissiah's logic is given form. To craft even one such being is to offer a prayer made manifest in flesh and steel. If for all their sacred ubiquity, not every soul may command these holy instruments. The creation and ownership of servitors is a grave responsibility, bound by ancient law and the strict hierarchy of the Imperium. Turn your thoughts, therefore, to those sanctioned hands granted the divine right to own, to create, and to command these constructs. For only the worthy may bear such a burden without inviting damnation. Not every soul within the Emperor's vast dominion, young acolyte, may lay claim to the sacred art of servitor creation. This is no craft for the unworthy or the uninitiated. To wield the laser scalpel and the neural shears is to exercise a grave and holy authority, one granted only by the immutable laws of the Imperium and the divine will of the Omnissiah. For in the shaping of a servitor, one does not merely alter flesh. One reshapes a fragment of humanity into an eternal servant of the Golden Throne. Such power must therefore rest only in hands that have been tested, sanctified, and bound by oath. At the apex of this sacred hierarchy stand the tech priests and magi of the Adeptus Mechanicus. Upon the red sands of Mars and across every forged world, it is we who hold the most ancient and complete rites. Only those who have ascended through the sacred orders, those who bear the blessed augmentations of the cult Mechanicus, and whose minds have been properly aligned with the holy logic of the machine god, may lawfully perform the full rituals of lobotomization and binding. A lowly menial, or even an unranked initiate must never presume to touch these mysteries. To do so would be heresy most foul, punishable by immediate servitorization of the offender himself. Yet the Emperor's wisdom extends beyond the forged worlds. Certain high authorities of the Imperium are likewise granted the righteous privilege. The Lords of the Inquisition, in their eternal vigilance against the mutant, the heretic, and the Xenos, may command the creation of specialized interrogation servitors and guardian constructs. High-ranking officers of the Astra Militarum in the Imperial Navy, upon presentation of sealed writs from the Departmentum Unitorum, may requisition combat and labor servitors for their regiments and vessels. Even the great noble houses of certain ancient worlds, those whose bloodlines have proven loyal across 10,000 years, are permitted limited numbers of domestic and security servitors, always under the watchful eye of an attached tech priest overseer. But mark this well, devoted student. With authority comes eternal responsibility. Every servitor created must be logged in the sacred ledgers of the Forge. Every lobotomy must be justified before the Omnissiah. To create one without proper sanction is to invite the wrath of the machine god and the judgment of the Emperor. You, as a young acolyte, must therefore approach this craft with utmost humility and reverence. Your hands will one day perform these rites only under the supervision of your elders, until the day your own mastery is proven and the holy oils of ordination are applied to your augmetics. Remember always your duty, young one. In crafting a servitor, you do not seek personal glory. You seek only to strengthen the Imperium, to redeem the condemned, and to offer perfect obedience to the Emperor who sits enthroned upon Terra. Every cut you make, every circuit you implant, must be performed as an act of prayer. Fail in this solemn mindset, and the machine spirits you awaken may turn against you, or worse. The flesh you bind may yet retain some shadow of its former sin. Thus are the boundaries of authority clearly drawn, that chaos may not enter where only order should reign. Hold this knowledge as a sacred trust, for it guards both your soul and the future it works. Yet even among the blessed servitors that may be created by these sanctioned hands, there exists a wondrous and terrible variety. Turn your thoughts now, faithful student, to the many sacred forms that this holy craft may take, for only by understanding the different paths of service can you one day choose the correct rites for the vessel before you. Behold now, young acolyte, the magnificent tapestry of forms that the holy rite of servitorization may take, for not all servitors are cast from the same sacred mold. Each type is a distinct expression of the Omnisio's will, shaped by purpose and sanctified by function. As you progress in your studies, you will learn that the correct choice of form is itself an act of devotion, a prayer offered in steel and flesh that ensures the Emperor's dominion endures. First among the most common are the labor servitors, the tireless backbone of every forge and hive. These are the simplest in design, yet the most numerous. Their limbs are augmented with industrial pistons and manipulator claws, their spines reinforced with adamantium rods, so they may carry burdens that would break a dozen unaltered men. Many have their auditory and visual cortices partially excised, leaving only the capacity to heed simple binary commands. They toil in the manufactorums without cease, welding, hauling, sorting, and recycling, their lobotomized minds free of complaint or weariness. In their silent, methodical labor, they embody the purest humility before the machine god. Next come the gun servitors and combat servitors, forged for the crucible of war. These are more heavily armored, their organic remnants encased in thick plates of flak and ceramite. Some are mounted upon tracked or bipedal chassis, their arms replaced entirely by heavy bolters, plasma cannons, or multi-lasers. Others retain enough humanoid form to march beside the astromilitarum as living shields and fire support platforms. Their neural pathways are hardened against pain and fear. They advance through lost fire and shrapnel without hesitation, pouring forth the Emperor's wrath until their biological components are utterly spent. To witness such a construct striding through the smoke of battle is to see the machine god made manifest in righteous fury. Then there are the helm servitors and bridge operatives, delicate yet vital. These are often created from more intelligent stock, those whose minds once held technical aptitude. Their skulls house additional cogitator implants that link them directly to the machine spirits of starships and void fortresses. They stand eternal watch at navigation consoles and gunnery arrays, their eyes replaced by auspex lenses, their hands fused to control lectrons. Through them the great vessels of the Imperial Navy sail, the treacherous void, guided by minds that can never grow distracted or treacherous. In the Mechanicus halls and chirurgical vaults labor the surgical servitors, their fingers replaced by arrays of microblades, auto sutures, and bone saws. Their organic senses are tuned to detect the slightest deviation in vital signs, their movements calibrated to the micron. They assist the highest-ranking chirurgeons and procedures, both sacred and terrible, never flinching, never erring. Some are even fitted with additional limbs, so they may perform multiple incisions simultaneously, their lobotomized focus absolute. There exist yet more specialized forms. The servo skulls, little more than severed heads preserved and granted anti-grav suspensors, used as scribes and messengers. The guardian servitors, hulking sentinels bound to the doors of holy vaults. The penitent servitors, created from especially heinous sinners whose bodies are further tormented with pain amplifiers, so their atonement is ever present. And the rarest of all, the Praetorian servitors, towering constructs granted limited tactical autonomy for the protection of high magi. Each type, young student, represents a different path to redemption and service. Each demands its own precise sequence of rites, its own balance of flesh and machinery, its own litanies of binding. To choose wrongly is to waste both the vessel and the sacred opportunity for atonement. You must therefore approach every candidate with a prayer upon your lips and the sacred texts open before you. Study the flesh presented to you. Measure its strength, its prior sins, its latent potential. Only then can a correct form be chosen, and a holy work begun in earnest. For the first and most solemn step upon that path, devoted acolyte, is the careful selection of the worthy vessel, the living clay from which the servitor shall be sculpted. Turn your mind now to this grave responsibility, for upon the quality of the raw material rests the success of all that follows. Before the first incision is ever made, young acolyte, before the neural shears touch living tissue or the sacred oils anoint the scalp, there must come the most solemn act of judgment, the choosing of the worthy vessel. For not all flesh is equal in the eyes of the Omnisia. Not every condemned soul possesses the raw material required to become a durable and obedient servitor. To select unwisely is to invite malfunction, waste, and a silent reproach of the machine god. Therefore approach this step with the gravity it demands, as a priest approaches the altar. The ideal candidate is most often drawn from the ranks of the condemned, heretics proven guilty by the holy tribunals, recidivist criminals whose repeated offenses have exhausted all mercy, were those whose genetic deviance marks them for redemption through service rather than simple execution. Yet even among these, one must look deeper. Examine first the physical vessel. Seek bodies that are strong of limb and sound of organ, for the biological components must continue to sustain the augmetic for centuries. Avoid those ravaged by disease, malnutrition, or excessive mutation, lest the implanted machinery reject its host and the entire labor be lost. The spine must be straight, the cardiovascular system resilient, the lungs capable of supporting prolonged operation within toxic or oxygen-poor environments. Measure also the mind, though you will soon excise much of it. Certain higher functions may be preserved or removed according to the servitor type desired. A candidate with prior technical aptitude, a former menial laborer or junior engineer, may serve well as a helm servitor or surgical assistant, for some residual pattern recognition can be repurposed. A hulking brute of the underhive, thick of bone and broad of shoulder, is better suited for heavy labor or combat chassis. Record every observation in your blessed data slate. Weigh the sins against the potential for atonement. Ask yourself in silent prayer, will this flesh, once purified, glorify the Emperor through unceasing service, or will it become a burden upon the sacred forges? Never, under any circumstances, select an unaltered citizen of proven loyalty, nor a servant of the ecclesiarchy, nor any soul still capable of meaningful repentance through other means. Such would constitute a grave sin against the natural order. The Emperor demands efficiency, not wanton destruction. Only those already judged irredeemable by Imperial law may be offered this final and most merciful path to usefulness. Once the vessel is chosen, young student, you must present it before the assembled tech priests of your order and recite the rite of justification, that the Omnisia may witness and approve your selection. Only upon receiving the binary blessing of the Forge's machine spirit may the work proceed. In this act you uphold not merely tradition, but the very balance that prevents the Imperium from devouring its own faithful. Carry out this selection with reverence and precision, for the flesh you choose today will one day stand eternal vigil in the Emperor's name. Treat it not as mere meat, but is raw clay soon to be exalted into something far greater, a living prayer made of blood and steel. With the worthy vessel now secured and sanctified by judgment, the time comes to prepare that mortal frame for the transformations ahead. The body must be cleansed, stabilized, and made ready for the holy severing that will free it from the prison of its own will. With the worthy vessel selected and brought before the sanctified operating theater, young acolyte, the true labor of creation begins not with the blade, but with purification. For the flesh must be made clean, both in body and in spirit, before it may receive the holy gifts of the Omnia. This is no hasty procedure born of mortal impatience. It is a solemn vigil, a sacred cleansing that may last many days, during which the candidate is prepared as one prepares a temple for the descent of divine presence. First, the body is stripped of all worldly corruption. The condemned is immersed in baths of consecrated oils and antiseptic onwards, their skin scrubbed with blessed abrasives until every trace of filth, tattoo, or prior sin is scoured away. Hair is shorn, nails excised, and any external piercings or adornments removed, for only unadorned flesh may enter the presence of the machine spirit. Simultaneously, the organs are stabilized. Intravenous lines deliver sacred nutrients and stabilizing elixirs, strengthening the heart and lungs so they may endure the trials to come. Respiratory filters are temporarily fitted, and circulatory stimulants are administered to ensure the brain remains viable until the moment of its holy reconfiguration. While the flesh is thus purified, the mind undergoes preparatory conditioning. Mild neural suppressants are introduced through the spinal column, dulling higher agitation without yet touching the core faculties that will soon be excised. The candidate is strapped to the preparation slab beneath banks of lumen globes and servoskulls that record every vital sign. You, as the attending acolyte, must recite the litany of readiness without pause, your voice joined by the binary canticles of attending tech priests. In this way, the machine spirits of the surgical instruments are awakened and made favorable. Surgical readiness demands further modifications. Redundant organs, the appendix, certain lymph nodes, and non-essential glands are removed with precision, lest they become sites of future infection. Major muscle groups are mapped and marked for later augmentation. Skeletal integrity is tested and reinforced where necessary with microbolts and adamantium threading. The skull itself is measured with calipers and auspex arrays, its contours logged so that the cranial cavity may later accept the correct cogitator housing without fracture or misalignment. Throughout these rites, you must remain vigilant, young student. Monitor the bio readings constantly. Offer prayer at every deviation. Remember always that this flesh, though condemned, is now under your sacred care. To lose a vessel through carelessness before the great severing is to waste a soul that might otherwise have served the Emperor for centuries. Treat each preparation as an act of devotion. Every incision, every injection, every litany is an offering upon the altar of duty. When a body is finally deemed pure, stable, and ready, when the machine spirits sing in harmonious approval and the flesh lies quiescent upon the slab, only then may the most solemn moment arrive. The time has come to excise the unnecessary will, to perform the rite of lobotomization that will forever free the vessel from the chains of mortal frailty and elevate it into perfect, eternal service. Now comes the most sacred and terrible moment in the creation of a servitor, young acolyte, the rite of lobotomization, wherein the unruly spark of independent will is forever quenched so that perfect obedience may take its place. Approach this threshold with trembling reverence, for here you do not merely cut flesh, you reshape a soul in the Emperor's name. This is the crucible in which a condemned criminal is redeemed and remade into an instrument of divine purpose. The vessel lies prepared upon the adamantium operating slab, its body purified, its vital signs steady beneath the cold gaze of the luminar rays. Servo skulls drift overhead, their auto quills scratching ceaseless records. You and your supervising tech priests stand robed in sanctified red, anointed with sacred oils. Begin with the litany of Servitors, intoned in low, resonant binary and high Gothic, that the machine spirits of the surgical instruments may bear witness and lend their blessing. With utmost precision, the cranial vault is opened. A circular incision is made at the crown of the skull using the blessed laser scalpel. The bone flap lifted away with mechanical reverence. Beneath lies the living brain, that treacherous organ of doubt, ambition, and sin. Here the true work commences. Using guided neural shears and microcauterizers, you excise the frontal lobes with deliberate care, severing the higher cognitive centers that once harbored free will, ambition, and a capacity for heresy. The procedure must be exact. Enough must remain to sustain autonomic functions, breathing, circulation, basic motor response. Yet all that once made the being an individual is burned away. Portions of the temporal and parietal lobes are likewise trimmed where necessary, depending upon the servitor type ordained. Pain receptors are dulled or rerouted. Emotional centers are cauterized into stillness. Throughout the rite, you must monitor the bio-aspects with unblinking attention, for the flesh must not die. The heart must continue its sacred rhythm. The lungs must draw breath to cool the machinery yet to come. At each critical cut, pause and offer the prayer of release. From the chains of mortality, we set thee free. From the burden of choice, we grant thee purpose. In the Emperor's name, be made useful. When the excision is complete, the cavity is irrigated with consecrated fluids and fitted with the first interface ports. The organic remnants, now quiet and obedient, lie ready for the binding of steel. No screams echo in this chamber, for the suppressants have done their work, and the will that might have cried out has already been silenced. What remains is a vessel cleansed of sin, a blank parchment upon which the Omniscia shall write new and eternal directives. Perform this rite with solemn humility, young student. Never take pleasure in the cutting, nor feel pity for what is lost. You are not destroying a life. You are granting it the highest mercy the Imperium can bestow, the chance to serve forever without flaw or faltering. In this act you fulfill your duty to the Emperor, redeeming the unworthy and strengthening the realm he protects. With the will thus excised and the flesh made quiescent, the time has come to bind that living remnant to sacred steel. Turn your thoughts, therefore, to the holy integration of cybernetic augmentations in mechanical interfaces, whereby the servitor is truly born in the union of flesh and machine. With the unruly will now forever silenced, an immortal frame made pure and quiescent, young acolyte, the sacred union of flesh and machine may at last commence. This is the hour of true creation, wherein the remaining organic remnant is exalted through the blessed rites of augmentation. Approach each implantation with the gravity of one who welds the Emperor's own will into living tissue. For in this binding the servitor is born anew as something greater than either man or mechanism alone. The operating theater falls into reverent silence save for the low hum of the machine spirits and a rhythmic click of sotoarves. First, the spinal column is reinforced with adamantium rods and neural bypass cables, ensuring that every future command from the implanted cogitators flows without resistance through what little cortex remains. The major muscle groups are laced with synthetic myofibers, granting strength far beyond that of any unaltered human. Limbs chosen for heavy labor or combat are severed at the joints with plasma torches and replaced by blessed hydraulic pistons and manipulator arrays, each connection cauterized and sealed with sanctified resins so that rejection may never occur. The chest cavity is opened with solemn precision. Redundant organs already removed. The heart and lungs are reinforced with secondary pumps and filtration stacks, allowing the servitor to function in vacuum, toxin clouds, or the rat-scorched depths of a forge. Into the abdominal cradle are fitted nutria processors and waste recyclers, that the biological remnant may sustain itself for centuries upon the barest intake of sacred oils and promethium derivatives. Every incision is accompanied by the chanting of binding litanies, every wire fused with prayers of union, every port anointed with oils drawn from the holiest reservoirs of Mars. Most sacred of all is the cranial integration, where the frontal lobes once schemed and sinned, now rest the primary cogitator housing, a masterpiece of sanctified circuitry etched with runes of obedience and loyalty. Secondary logic engines are implanted along the remaining brainstem, hardwired to the autonomic systems. Optical nerves are severed and replaced with Auspex lenses or targeting arrays according to the ordained form. Auditory channels are rerouted to Vox receivers tuned only to authorized command frequencies. The tongue, when retained, is fitted with a Voxcaster capable of broadcasting only preloaded binary canticles and status reports. Throughout this holy merging, you must watch the vital signs with unceasing vigilance. Young student, should any machine spirit falter or any fleshly remnant rebel, you must immediately apply the corrective rites, electroshocks, sanctified oils, or further cauterization, until harmony is restored. Fail not in this duty, for a flawed binding may produce a malfunctioning servitor, a being neither fully obedient nor safely contained, and such error reflect upon the Creator as much as upon the vessel. When the final port is sealed and the last rune of binding glows with approval upon the newly forged chassis, the body that once bore a sinner's name is no more. In its place stands a living instrument of the Imperium, flesh and steel woven together in perfect, eternal service. The union is complete. The servitor awaits only its awakening and final consecration. Perform this integration with humility and precision, devoted acolyte, ever reminding yourself that these hands of yours are but tools in the Omnissiah's grand design. Through your labor another soul is redeemed, another servant added to the Emperor's uncounted legions. With flesh and steel now bound as one, the time approaches for the final awakening. The programming of sacred directives, the sealing of binding oaths, and a solemn moment when a servitor rises to fulfill its ordained purpose. The flesh and steel have been joined in sacred union, young acolyte, yet the work remains unfinished until the newly forged servitor is awakened and consecrated in the sight of the Omnissiah. This is the hour of final benediction, wherein the living instrument receives its eternal purpose and is bound by unbreakable oaths to the Emperor's divine will. Perform these rites with the utmost solemnity, for in this moment a redeemed soul steps forth from the shadow of sin into the eternal light of perfect service. The completed form is transferred with reverent care to the consecration cradle, a raised dais encircled by braziers burning with sacred promethium and censers heavy with incense. Servo skulls descend in formation, their lenses glowing with approval. You and your supervising magi stand arrayed in full ceremonial robes, the binary hymn of activation rising from every vox emitter in the chamber. First comes the programming of directives. Through the cranial data ports you interface the primary cogitator with the forge's master logic engines. Here the sacred commands are etched deep into what remains of the organic matrix. Obedience protocols, task hierarchies, pain threshold governors, and loyalty subroutines that render betrayal impossible. For a labor servitor, the directives are simple and repetitive. For a gun servitor, they include targeting matrices in fire discipline. For a surgical servitor, they encompass anatomical databases and sterile field maintenance. Every line of code is spoken aloud as a litany, every subroutine sealed with the sign of the cog and the Aquila. Once the directives are burned into the core, the binding oaths are intoned. You place your anointed mechadendrites upon the cranial housing and recite the ancient words of consecration. By the will of the Emperor and the grace of the Omnissiah, I bind thee to eternal service. Let no thought arise save that which serves. Let no action occur save that which glorifies. In flesh and steel, in blood and oil, thou art now his instrument. The chamber resonates with the answering chorus of attending tech priests, their voices rising in perfect harmony as electro-sanctified energy courses through the newly implanted systems. Final wards against corruption are woven into the machine's spirit, hexagrammatic seals that guard against demonic intrusion and the creeping touch of the archenemy. At the culmination of the litanies, the activation sequence is initiated. Power flows through the blessed conduits. The servitor's remaining organic eye, or its newly installed Auspex lens, flickers open. A low, mechanical exhalation issues from the Voxcaster as the first breath of service is drawn. There is no scream of awakening, no flicker of residual personality. Only calm, obedient readiness. The construct rises slowly upon its new limbs, joints whispering with oiled precision, and assumes the default posture of attention. Is alive, it is consecrated, is ready to serve. Gaze upon your creation with quiet pride, tempered by humility, young student. This being that now stands before you was once a sinner, a burden upon the Imperium. Through your hands and the grace of the machine god, it has been elevated to something eternal and useful. Offer a final prayer of thanksgiving. Anoint the chassis once more with sacred oils and log its designation in the holy ledgers. From this moment forward it belongs not to you, but to the Emperor and the Omnicia alone. Cherish this sacred duty, for in every servitor you awaken you extend the Emperor's reach by one more obedient hand. Yet the path of mastery does not end with the standard forms. There exist higher and more specialized creations that demand even greater wisdom and precision. Turn your thoughts, therefore, devoted acolyte, to those advanced and tailored rites reserved for the most exceptional vessels and the most exalted purposes. Even as the standard forms of servitor fulfill the ceaseless needs of the Imperium, young acolyte, there arise occasions when the Omnicia demands creations of greater complexity and rarer purpose. These advanced and specialized servitors are not undertaken lightly. They require the most experienced hands, the purest alignment of flesh and machine spirit, and the deepest understanding of the sacred texts. Only when your mastery has been proven through countless standard fabrications may you be entrusted with these elevated rites, for in them the boundary between tool and holy relic grows thin indeed. Consider first the Praetorian Servitors, towering guardians forged for the personal defense of high-ranking magi and forge lords. Their selection demands vessels of exceptional physical stature and resilience. The Lobotomization is more selective, preserving limited tactical subroutines so they may respond to fluid battlefield conditions while remaining utterly loyal to their designated master. Layer upon layer of reinforced ceramite and refractor fields are integrated with the flesh, and their cranial cogitators are granted advanced threat assessment matrices drawn for the most ancient STC fragments. To create one is to craft a living bulwark, a silent sentinel whose very presence proclaims the sanctity of that which it protects. Then there are the interrogator servitors, crafted for the holy work of the Inquisition and the Ordo Hereticus. These demand candidates whose prior lies contain cunning or deceit, for certain analytical remnants of a mind are carefully preserved and repurposed. Neural probes and pain induction arrays are woven directly into the remaining cortex, allowing the servitor to extract truth from the unwilling with mechanical precision and relentless patience. Their voices are modulated to soothing or terrifying frequencies as required, and their ocular implants record every flicker of guilt or falsehood for later doctrinal review. In their cold, unblinking service, heretics are brought to confession and the Imperium is kept pure. Rarer still are the arcane servitors and datamancer constructs, reserved for the innermost vaults of the greatest forge worlds. These are built from candidates possessing latent psychic sensitivity or exceptional mnemonic capacity, traits normally viewed with suspicion, yet here redeemed through total subsumption. Their skulls house expanded noospheric interfaces capable of communing directly with the most ancient and temperamental machine spirits. Entire libraries of forbidden lore may be stored within their cranial databanks, safe from the frailties of mortal memory. To fashion such a being is to create a living repository of the Omnissiah's wisdom, forever bound against corruption. There exist yet more esoteric forms. The choir servitors whose preserved vocal cords are tuned to broadcast massed binary hymns across entire battle fleets. The Voidwalker servitors adapted for prolonged operation in the cold emptiness beyond hull plating. And the penitent engine prototypes that merge the most heinous sinners with dreadnought-like chassis, so their atonement may be measured in the blood of the Emperor's foes. Each demands unique modifications to the rites you have already learned, altered sequences of lobotomization, specialized augmetic patterns, and bespoke litanies of binding never uttered in the common forges. Approach these advanced creations, devoted student, only when your soul is in perfect harmony with the machine god and your superiors grant their blessing. To overreach is to court catastrophe, for a flawed specialized servitor may become a vector of heresy or a wasteful drain upon sacred resources. Yet when performed correctly, these exalted forms stand as testaments to the heights of Mechanicus art, living prayers given terrifying purpose. Master these higher rites with patience and piety, young acolyte, ever conscious of the immense responsibility they carry. For in tailoring such magnificent instruments, you draw closer to the divine vision of the Omnissiah himself, and so the knowledge of creation reaches its culmination. Yet true mastery is not found merely in the act of making. It endures in the eternal vigil that follows. Turn your thoughts, therefore, faithful servant, to the sacred duties of maintenance, oversight, and the unending warnings against error, that you may walk the path of the Creator with wisdom and humility for the remainder of your days. With the Servitor awakened and consecrated, young acolyte, your labor does not end. It merely enters its longest and most solemn phase. For to create is sacred, but to maintain is eternal. The holy constructs you bring into being will serve for centuries, and upon your shoulders rests the unending vigil that ensures their flawless devotion never falters. This is the true test of the Mechanicus artisan. Not the moment of awakening, but the patient, prayerful centuries that follow. Regular maintenance must be performed with ritual precision. Every solar cycle, the biological remnants must be inspected for signs of decay. Nutrient reservoirs replenished with sanctified oils. Joint anointed. Cogitator housings purged of dust and corruption. The cranial interfaces must be recalibrated. The loyalty subroutines reaffirmed through binary canticles, and any anomalous bio-readings corrected before they can blossom into malfunction. Neglect even the smallest rite, and a once-perfect servitor may seize, overheat, or, in the gravest cases, retain some shadowed fragment of its former will, becoming a vessel for heresy. Oversight demands constant vigilance. Log every task performed. Record every deviation, no matter how minor. Should a servitor exhibit hesitation, repeated error, or, Emperor forbid, anything resembling independent thought, it must be immediately returned to the forge for relobotomization or merciful decommissioning. Such failures reflect not upon the construct alone, but upon the Creator who first shaped it. Remember always, your works are extensions of your own soul in the eyes of the Omnissiah. Their purity is your purity. Their service is your service. Heed these grave warnings against heretical error, devoted student. Never experiment beyond the sanctioned rites. Never attempt to preserve too much of the original mind in the name of efficiency. Never allow pity or pride to sway your head. The path of the Creator is narrow and unforgiving. To stray is to invite the attention of the tech priest auditors, or worse, the cold gaze of the Inquisition. Yet so long as you walk this path with humility, reciting the litanies of maintenance and offering every adjustment as prayer, you shall know only the quiet satisfaction of righteous labor. Carry this sacred charge with you through all the years of your service, young acolyte. Every servitor you create, maintain, and ultimately retire in honorable decommissioning is another soul redeemed, another bulwark raised against the darkness. In tending these blessed instruments, you fulfill your highest duty to the Emperor and the Machine God. You become not merely a craftsman of flesh and steel, but a true shepherd of the Imperium's eternal machinery. Let this knowledge settle deep within your augmented heart. Let it guide every future rite you perform. For in the creation and care of servitors, you do not merely labor. You participate in the divine work of sustaining the Emperor's realm across 10,000 years of unending night. And so concludes the sacred teachings of this chronicle. May the Omnicia watch over your hands. May the Emperor guide your thoughts. And may every servitor you bring forth stand as testament to your unwavering devotion. My Lord, thus ends this sacred chronicle of the blessed art of servitor creation, imparted unto you, young acolyte of the Mechanicus, that you may walk the path of the Omnicia with hands both steady and devout. May every rite you perform henceforth be offered in perfect humility, every vessel you elevate redeemed through eternal service, and every construct that rises beneath your gaze stand as living testament to the unbreakable union of flesh and holy machine. Remember always your place within the grand design. The Emperor upon his golden throne watches over all, and a machine god guides her every incision and prayer. Through the creation and care of these tireless servants, the Imperium endures. Its forges roar, its fleets sail, and its armies march beneath the Aquila. Carry this knowledge not as mere data, but as a sacred flame within your core, that it may light your long service through the darkness of the 41st millennium. Go now, faithful student, return to your forged temple, take up the blessed tools, and let your works glorify the Emperor and the Omnicia until the stars themselves grow cold. Thank you, my Lord, for listening to this chronicle.